She's not there. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Newsma is not there. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Chair Livingston.
Here.
Member McMillan.
I am here. I am hoping that my internet will hold up. I'm getting on the plane right now.
Okay. And Member Rikus.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum established.
And if Leslie has to drop, I think we still have a quorum. Is that the case? We need 5 people, or is it 6?
We need
Yes, it's 5.
5, so
Okay.
And we have 6.
Sure.
May I also, since I see we have the president of the Firefighters Union and others, is there any chance we could just move those first 2 items out so we can spend the rest of the time looking at the audit without making public stand around? Could I move to the order? Would that be all right?
Yes.
Those other.
Yeah, you'd be in motion to,
Right. I would, I would second it. So you would want to put it after the approval of the minutes, make it the first item. And
So we have the 2, both firefighter and pilot. That would be great.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that because we do have quite a few items on the agenda for this time. So that's fine. That's fine with me that we go ahead and do
Okay,
that.
great. Do we have to
We
take
can
a
vote on that, or we'll just do it. Okay, so I guess we'll go right into public comment then.
Looks like we have Trisha Connolly. Would you like to speak? So please unmute yourself.
No, thank you.
Okay. And then I believe that is it for public comment. Then I don't see anybody else.
I see Billy Lynch.
Okay, Billy Lynch, if you would like to speak, go ahead.
Just to clarify with the committee, is this to speak about the referral item? Is that the intent to your Councilmember Kelly?
Yeah, I think we just
It's
do public comment at the beginning, so we won't be doing it by item, I guess. Is that correct? Are we just going to do it all in the beginning?
I also think it's fair to bring, if there are questions relating to the request, to bring Mr. Lynch in at that time as a representative of the firefighters.
Right. Okay. So I would suggest, why don't we approve the minutes and then we'll make it the first discussion item then, right? So I guess we have no public comment then for this evening. There's anyone else? 1 second. Okay.
No, I don't see anybody else.
All right. Okay. Good. And I guess hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting on July 12th. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Okay. And second?
Second.
Okay. And why don't we go ahead and then vote on that?
So you can, all in favor, right?
All in favor?
No, I'm sorry. With virtual meetings, roll call is required.
Okay.
Sorry.
With all
Pardon me.
virtual.
Okay. Jess?
Yes. Councilmember Weems, not here. Councilmember Newsma, not here. Councilmember Burns.
Yes. Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Chair Livingston.
Aye.
Committee Member Rikus.
Aye.
And Committee Member McMillan. I believe she just dropped off a minute ago.
but we still have the quorum,
I
right?
don't see her in the meeting.
Yes, we do. We still have
we
5
have
people.
quorum.
Okay, and Chair, with your permission, let me just get a minute to introduce our new budget manager before we get into the business. Clayton Black is in the frame here, and he has just joined us on Monday as a budget manager. He's coming from a Schaumburg with almost 7 to 8 years of experience in the annual budget and the capital improvement plan. So we are really excited to have him with us, and would be a great addition to the City of Evanston staff.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to meet you all. Look forward to working
Yeah,
with you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Glad to have that position filled and that you've joined us. So, okay. So very good. So, as we just discussed, I think we want to go immediately into what was item E, the ARPA wage reimbursement revenue replacement for the firefighters. And this is a discussion item, correct? It is not an action item. It's a discussion item, as I understand it.
That's correct. I may be asking that we vote to move this to council because of the timing involved. So we have that option to vote to move it on to council after discussion. There are some timing questions involved given the form of the reimbursement. So if you want, I can do a quick overview, and then Billy Lynch can chime in. And
that's fine. That's fine.
Does that sound right? So I'll
Thank
just speak to it rather than read to it. It should be in the packet. It should be in there. It's like a 4 or 5 page explanation of how this works. But in essence, what happened is the firefighters, and again, Billy, you'll clarify anything that I leave out, had negotiated a 4-year contract that ended at the end of 22. And in the years 21 and 22, they had negotiated, signed, agreed upon a 2.5% raise for each of those 2 years. And during the period of COVID, they essentially forfeited or sacrificed those raises for the years 21 and 22 based on a projected shortfall in revenue due to COVID. So my understanding is that all of the other non-exempt groups have been made whole since then. For example, AFSCME workers were furloughed, they were reimbursed. Policemen didn't take a financial hit, but were given a bonus, a retention bonus. So it's just to say that, but the firefighters have yet to be made whole from sacrificing this raise during this period of time from 21 and 22. It amounted to, this is very much on average, a ballpark figure of maybe around $5,000 total, what would be lost in the income that the firefighters would have made during that time. And we just have to think, we then received some, about $43 million in ARPA money. And yet they still have not been made whole. Now they did negotiate with former interim city manager Kelly Gandersky. They received part of that back, less than half of that was returned to them, but they still haven't been made whole, while, like I say, other groups have been made whole. And this isn't even premium pay. Premium pay is something that you give on top of the salaries. And these are frontline workers. I think I don't need to go on about the value of our incredibly wonderful Evanston Fire Department and our firefighters. So what is proposed here in this referral, because this is in essence expenditures that would have been made, but were not due to projected revenue shortfall. And in the ARPA budget, there is a fund or category called revenue replacement. And so and I think at this point we have $2.5 million left. So what I am suggesting is that we put money into the general fund from it the same way we would put it in if we say couldn't fill potholes because, we didn't, fulfill some expenditure that we're planning on because of revenue shortfall. We would take it from the ARPA revenue replacement fund and put it into the general fund. I'm saying we do this now for our firefighters. We take the money from the revenue replacement fund and put it into the general fund so that we can then pay the firefighters in order to make them whole for the salary sacrifice that they gave up in order to help the city get through COVID. The way it's been proposed, and I'll let Billy speak a little bit more to this, is in the form of floating holidays. And I'll let Billy talk about this, but this is, in fact, the city will end up even saving a little more because firefighters will have the option to either take a day and a half floating holiday, 1 per year, this year, next year, and year 23, year 24, or cash out. Now, most will probably take, based on surveying, most will probably take this floating holiday, and very frequently, there's enough coverage that it doesn't even have to be subbed out. Sometimes it will, but it's just to say that the city will still have ended up making money on this deal, so to speak, when they forfeited their salary, their wage increases. So, Billy, I'm going to turn it over to you to fill in on any part that I missed.
Sure. Thank you very much, Councilmember Kelly. Yeah, my name is Billy Lynch, president of Local 742. I rise to speak in strong support of this referral that's been made, and I respectfully ask that this committee consider the same. I'm not going to dive too deep into, how COVID played out for the fire departments, but I can say that throughout the onset of COVID and the last 2 years up until now, the fire department in a number of ways has been proven to be very resilient for the city of Evanston. Of course, the onset of the pandemic, when none of us really knew what COVID was or how it would affect us, the fire department was there and they stepped up and they answered the call as the city expected them to do, not knowing what that meant for themselves, not knowing what that meant for their families. Several members staying in hotels, not seeing their families for weeks on end because they were hesitant, concerned to bring something home to a loved one, God forbid a child. And those are some very, very tough days for our department and for the union. At that time, 2 years ago, we were as short-staffed as we've been as a department in a long, long time. We were almost 15% of our department was short-staffed, not able to hire anybody, given just the timing of COVID and not being able to offer a new eligibility test to candidates. We were about 15 members short. That meant that all of our current firefighters were working extra hours in person. I'm sure all of you are very well aware from the workforce perspective of these issues of fatigue, burnout, just mental health draining. All of those issues were very real within the fire department and quite frankly still are today. When the city asked the respective bargaining units to make financial concessions during COVID, once again, the fire department, the fire union stepped up in good faith to do that on behalf of the city. As Councilmember Kelly said, relinquishing 2 years worth of previously negotiated raises to help offset what was at the time a projected multi-million-dollar budget shortfall. The concessions that we made with the city were not meant to add to a surplus, which the city, ended up 2021 with a surplus. That was never the intent of the negotiations. We understood at the time of when COVID hit that the city had to take a more gloom and doom perspective of what COVID might do to revenue shortfalls. But of course, the infusion of $43 million to the city's budget from the federal government, coupled with what turned out to be better than projected revenue shortfalls, all those things considered, I respectfully offered the opinion that those wages, those concessions, which were made in good faith, should be returned to our union, just as other members within the city, other employees within the city were made whole as well. And again, the concept of this proposal is to offer basically a floating holiday, which is in layman's terms for fire department members, just a day off, 1 day off each year for the next 3 years. And the reason why it was 3 years is Councilmember Kelly again had alluded to this partial 2.5% raise that we had previously negotiated with the former interim city manager, Gandersky. That particular raise, coupled with this projected 3 years of floating holidays, will more or less equate to the concessions financially that each member gave up to the city as part of COVID negotiations. So I would strongly urge this committee to consider that proposal in good faith, understanding that yes, every employee within the city has had to step up during the pandemic to do more with less. But when you actually look at the face of the response of COVID, it has been and will continue to be the fire department. Public health starts with the fire department. And I can say that on behalf of my members, they've proven to be very resilient during the pandemic. But we also have to be very honest that those issues of fatigue, burnout, mental health, those are very real issues that still exist and they haven't gone away. And this proposal, as offered, if voted on and approved, will be a good faith gesture by the city to validate a lot of that work that has been done by members of Local 742 to keep the city safe, to keep the residents safe, and to maintain an excellent level of service that our residents deserve for being an Evanston resident. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions or provide clarification on exactly what this proposal is and why it's worth considering. And I thank you for your time.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, Councilmember Reed, I think if you'd first hand I saw, if you'd like to comment.
Yes, I just want to jump in and say that I am fully supportive of this measure. As Mr. Lynch said, the fire department and many other folks, I think we need to do right by our city staff. We need to do right by our frontline employees, whether they're city staff or not. So I think given, as was said, I think the key factor here is that the fire department gave up this raise in order to help the city weather its financial, what was seen as a potential financial storm with COVID that did not take place. Just yesterday during council, the audit was presented, and right now our general fund balance is sitting at 47 million. The city has a goal of keeping 16.66% of our annual general fund expenditures in reserve. That number is 19 million. Hitesh is probably thinking to correct me a little bit. We don't, just because we have the 47 million now, doesn't mean that's where we're going to end. But we do anticipate ending the year, even this year, with the surplus. And given those facts, I think this committee should show its support for our staff, for our firefighters, and move this forward to council for council to vote to give this increase.
Very good. Mr. Stoneback, I think you have your hand up.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Dave Stoneback, Interim Deputy City Manager. On behalf of the City Manager's Office, we would respectfully request that the negotiations with the unions and the employees of the city stay with the City Manager's Office. As Mr. Lynch indicated, the original negotiations were completed with the City Manager. The City Manager is the one that also negotiates with ASME, with the police, and also works on behalf of the non-union representatives as well. I think that this would set a bad precedence that a union goes to a council member and seeks assistance in negotiating through the city council. Maybe next year ASME will feel slighted, and do they go to a different council member and ask that council member to do something through the Finance and Budget Committee to try to make them correct? So really the person that has the knowledge of all the negotiations and what goes on between all the different unions, and with negotiations starting next year, it would be more appropriate to allow the city manager, and we're not saying that the fire department, the City Manager's Office understands that the fire department did not get the same reimbursement or compensation, and that is due. But we feel that should be something that is handled during negotiations by the city manager rather than having it come through a committee. This was not anything that has ever been done in the past with, you know, a union going to a council member and asking for assistance to adjust their wages or compensation or benefit program. So I just respectfully request that you take that into consideration as you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly, I think. Next.
Thank you. So
Just
I-
really, just point of order, Chair. I just will say that as a point of order, typically folks who have not spoken first would have a chance to speak at least once before someone speaks twice.
Oh, there was a, okay. I'm sorry, that sort of broke
my
up.
vote in case I lose.
I'm sorry, was Sherry, I couldn't understand what you said.
Hi, it's Leslie McMillan. Can you hear me?
Oh, Leslie, we can hear you now. Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
hi. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say I'm fully in support of this, and please take this as my vote yes,
Okay. Got
in
it.
case I lose service.
Okay. Right. So thank you. So I think, sorry. So I think that given Councilmember Reed's point, I think that should we go to, does anyone object if we go to Councilmember Burns next for a comment? Right.
Chair, can I proceed?
Sure, please do.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand how, so we've had, you know, and granted all of these employees aren't necessarily represented by a union, so maybe that's the difference, but we've had other city staff bring forward ARPA requests, which is what makes it seem a little different. And the, you know, Billy and the police union have reached out to me about this in the past and have never framed it as something that they would even necessarily want to negotiate as part of their collective bargaining negotiations. I always saw this as any other, you know, staff or city employee or group that's representing those employees coming before us to say, hey, you know, there is a, this is an eligible use of how we can use ARPA funds, which this is considered, what do they call premium pay, I believe is what it's called.
Well, no, we would be using this as revenue replacement, just for point of order.
Oh, we'd be using this as revenue replacement. Okay, but same thing is that it felt like the process has been that this is not necessarily something that's negotiated in collective bargaining, but that, you know, city employees have the ability, whether it's through and maybe that is how it works, through the city manager's office, but in some way to submit a request for ARPA funds that wouldn't necessarily need to happen through negotiations. So I'm just trying to reconcile the difference between what is being requested of us here versus anyone else, any other department that will come to us for us to consider an ARPA request.
Yeah. May I respond or should I wait?
Sure. Sure, please do, Mr. Stoneback.
I don't believe any other ARPA request has been made for salary or benefits or compensation to city employees. Requests are made for projects, but none that would, you know, put dollars or benefits into an employee's hands. So that, in my opinion, that's the difference.
Okay.
Just as a final note, and then I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion. But I think that the difference is that this is an eligible use. Like, it literally calls out. Well, I know we're doing this through revenue replacement, which maybe makes it a little different. But I know premium pay was a eligible use that was called out. You know, in you know, as part of what we could, you know, spend ARPA funds on. But we have a lot of hands up. But that's all for now.
I believe the salary that the firefighters make would prohibit them from obtaining the premium pay funds from the premium pay portion of ARPA. And that's why it's being indicated to go to revenue replacement portion of that.
I'm sorry, that's not why. May I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
So that's absolutely not why it's not coming from premium. It's because they took this was money that was already budgeted to be spent. And that's why it's coming from revenue replacement. The same way we would budget to fill potholes on a street. And we said, you know what, we're going to have to let those 3 blocks go because we're not getting the revenue because of, this COVID situation. We're not going to get enough. So we're going to let it go until we have the money. And lo and behold, we got the money. That's why this is coming. Premium pay would be acknowledging above and beyond frontline workers or others, essential workers, for the work that they carried out during that time. But this is exactly replacing money that was already budgeted. And this is, again, a sacrifice they made. So now we're making them whole. This is very distinct from premium pay. That's a whole nother conversation that we need to have at our city about how we're going to allocate and award the premium pay, which is at $500,000 that we have currently allocated in the ARPA fund. So again, this has been going on for a long time. With all due respect, Mr. Stonebeck, conversations began a long time ago. We want to honor, City Council wants to honor our firemen and say, you made a sacrifice. We want to make you whole. The work you did was incredibly valuable to the city. And I would like to see us tonight on this committee move this forward to council, let council finish this debate if we want to, but I think this needs to be moved forward because of the timing of it and because of the days spread out over 3 years. The floating holiday form of reimbursement, which is a really wonderful way to make it relatively easy as opposed to calculating everybody's out. Again, it's reduced. Originally, it would have been about $650,000 with the amount that was negotiated with the former interim city manager. It's down to about 440 is what's listed in the top potential cost of it. Again, it'll probably be less than that because, and Billy, you can address this, but not every time when someone takes a floating holiday is there necessarily backup needed. Sometimes there's not a sub needed because there's enough coverage. So in the end, it'll probably be less than that. So I'd like to see this committee just move forward to vote to move this to council and let us continue this discussion at council.
Okay. Ms. Rikus? Do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I actually have more questions than answers. So first of all, I just want to thank the firefighters. You guys have just been amazing. And I know it's been such a very difficult period. So definitely wanted to thank you. But I just want to make sure I have all the information correct. We're looking at about 440,000.
Correct.
Okay. And there's about 2.5 million in the fund right now.
Correct. And it wouldn't come directly from it, right? That's revenue replacement goes into the general fund. And from that, we would take for the floating holidays.
And then just so I understand what the normal process is, normally this is handled through the city manager. Is that correct? Or is
ARPA allocation actually has been the city council voting on how we allocate it. So this is an unusual situation. I mean, yeah, contracts are negotiated, through the city manager.
Well, if I can just jump in, they're negotiated by the city manager's office, but at the end of the day, the funding is always approved by the city council. It's the city council's responsibility to approve the funding, and this is really just the city council approving funding for something that our firefighters forewent.
And then the other thing I was thinking about, so there's 2.5 million in this ARPA fund left. Do we know how I feel like we're just picking a piece and giving it. Do we know how this whole dollar is going to be allocated? Do we have a plan for that? Or what if someone else comes to us?
If I can jump in on that one as well. Yeah, and the only reason I say is because I think we can drop the ARPA. This isn't coming from ARPA. This is coming from general fund reserves. And so we have, as I stated up at the top, we have a very healthy general. We have about 47 million as of last month in our general fund. We anticipate ending the year, let's say, Hitesh can correct me if he thinks I'm way off, but 35 million, 30 to 35 million. Our goal is to have right now 19, almost 20 million in reserves. And so we're going to be, $5 to $10 million over what we, even more than that potentially, but at least five from what Hitesh will say, maybe 10 million over our reserve goals.
Thank you. And I want to add one more thing, Sherry, just so you're clear. I agree. I would ask that our next finance and budget Hitesh, if you could bring us the balance. 2.5 is just in one tiny slice of what remains, called the revenue replacement fund. Just to be clear, it's not the whole. So to Devon's point, if we could just move this to council, we can talk about it there, whether or not, assuming I think this will receive unanimous support, whether it comes, as to Devon's point, Councilmember Reed's point, whether we take it just from the surplus that currently exists, or we transfer it from revenue replacement. And that can be amended at council.
So Mr. Got it. I was saying Mr. Lynch has his hand up, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Livingston. Again, I just wanted to go on the record very clearly and say that I do not consider this, nor does the union consider this, a formal negotiation. I'm very cognizant of how wages and benefits and salaries have to be negotiated, and that is directly through whoever the city appoints to negotiate contracts. And it's definitely not the intention of the union to subvert that process by going to a council member. I want to make sure I put that on the record very clearly. So there's no gray area from how the union stands on that particular issue. Again, this is not negotiating wages. This was, again, and it's not certainly not within the purview of the union here to decide where the money comes from. But this is not negotiating wages. This is the concept behind this proposal was to tap into ARPA funding, and whether that came through premium pay or revenue replacement, again, not the purview of the union to decide where that comes from. That's the council's discretion. Knowing that the federal government provided the city of Evanston with $43 million, and somewhere within that $43 million, there was an eligible use for disbursement of those funds to firefighters. I do not believe, respectfully do not believe that we undermine that process by going to a council member and having a conversation with multiple council members about this particular idea. So I want to make that point very clearly. And another point as well is firefighters, based upon our salaries, are not ineligible for premium pay. The U.S. Treasury came out with a interim rule, and then a final rule back in January of this year that given our non-exempt FLSA status, we are very much eligible for premium pay based upon the discretion of how the decision makers, in this case, the city council, decides how to spend ARPA funding. So I just want to make that very clear to all the members on this call from the union's perspective that there was not any intent to undermine or backdoor the negotiation process by bringing this to a council member. We had those conversations, which we are very much allowed to do with individual council members, and it's ultimately the discretion of this committee or the city council in general to decide what to do with the proposal. Thanks.
Okay. So maybe if I haven't really talked on this, maybe if I could, and then we do have a lot to get through tonight, and so maybe we can try to get this to a conclusion, although we'll go back quickly to Councilmember Burns and Reed. But absolutely, I think everyone would agree we want the firefighters to be treated fairly, to be compensated for what they gave up, if assuming that is appropriate relative to what other city employees and union members did. And there's some statements in here that make it sound like this would put them at parity with others. So I think probably no one disagrees with that. And then also that we would want to make sure that, I've heard a couple of things here. Is it ARPA money? Is it revenue replacement? Is it, bringing in other dollars and bringing in ARPA dollars and really having this be some sort of offset? I think we also want to make absolutely certain that the mode at which this were to be funded is appropriate. And that is probably a legal determination that maybe someone in the city could make that determination as to what is the appropriate use of ARPA funds and how they would be used here. And then finally, Mr. Stoneback, is it, it seems like it would be your preference to just, have this be negotiated with yourself. is that something that could be done, on a expedient basis to sort of resolve the issue under a way that you feel is more the more customary way for this to get resolved? I think ultimately we just want to make sure that the firefighters are compensated equitably and fairly as they should be. And it sounds like, this proposal likely does that the funding is correct. But also if we don't have to go outside of normal channels, then, and set a precedent, why do that? So I guess that's a question for Mr. Stoneback. Is there a way to just have it be discussed with you and have it agreed in a way that you believe would be more customary if we get to the same place, and the city legal people, I think we have an opening there now, were to agree that the use that we're proposing is appropriate, then is it just an expedient way to get there that doesn't sort of set an odd precedent, but gets people the benefits that should be due to them without creating a problem with how the police union or anybody else would interpret what was done, which is probably your concern, right? That who's in a position to make sure everybody believes that this is an equitable solution that everyone would agree to. So I guess that's sort of a long-winded question, Mr. Stoneback, about, could we take it through the channels that you would suggest on a expedient basis to get to what everyone would agree is a fair result?
Thank you for the opportunity. Our challenge to doing this expediently is that the city manager's position is still filled with an interim position right now. So that makes it a challenge. And I would not be part of the negotiation team myself, but it would be the city manager, be the human resources director, and potentially an outside counsel that's helping us with all the different union negotiations that are coming up next year. Depending on when the city manager, if and when a city manager is hired permanently or announced to be permanent, then I think that some negotiations to resolve this could occur as soon as that position is filled. And Councilmember Reed is also correct in that the city council members are the ones that ultimately approve the negotiations. But again, past history has been is that the city manager and their designees do the negotiation, and it is brought to the city council for approval. We all work for the city council, and they are the ultimate authorities of approving this. Again, I only mentioned what my concern was, and whatever the city council members here do tonight, that is what staff will proceed to do. I don't think that's an issue using ARPA funds or general fund reserves. I guess my preference at this point in time would be ARPA funds, because we have a lot of uncertainty in other union negotiations for all the contracts, and we're having a class and comp study completed that might indicate we need more positions, that might indicate that our salaries should be higher than what they are to be competitive to attract new employees to our municipality. So in that dialogue, I would prefer to use ARPA.
Yeah, Chair, I agree with David there, with Manager Stoneback there, that we have, yes, an interim, but we have a city manager, and we had a city manager, from my understanding, that that would essentially negotiated this and agreed to the $400,000 the payment here, and so I think to expedite this conversation, I will move that we move this forward to council, and at council is where we will have the necessary legal counsel to make sure that this is all correct, and I think we should move this forward to our next our next regular council meeting. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. And may I just add one more thing too?
Yeah,
I think
sure.
Director Stonebeck did this will be much more expedient in terms of making this happen. Like, this has been worked on, this has been going over for a year. We will discuss it at council again and we'll move forward. And again, I think everybody here agrees that firefighters should be made whole. So this is the most expedient way, but to Councilmember Reed's point, it will go again to council. There will be legal counsel there. So I would like to second that we move this so that we can focus on other items here.
Yeah.
So that we move it to council so that the discussion continues there. So I would like to second that motion.
All right, and Chair, I had my hand up.
Should I
too,
ask
if could.
for a clear motion though, to move
Yeah,
this to council?
the motion is, to be clear, the motion is to move forward, just like any other budget amendment, to move forward $440,000 to the fire department's budget to allow the fire chief to.
Wait, I'm sorry, but it's very explicitly stated there, Director Stonebeck. It's clearly stated to take $440,000. We can amend it. That my referral is very, very detailed. To take 440 from the revenue replacement fund, put it to the general fund, and it explains it all in the floating. So we would take that referral, as Councilmember Reed said, essentially $440,000 into the general fund in order to reimburse the firefighters in the form of floating holidays over the next one per year over this.
It's actually 1.5 per year over the next 3 years. But
Right.
but that is the specificity of the motion that staff would prefer to have. And if it's
It's all there. If you read it,
well, the referral is not here. What's in
Yes,
the packet-
no, it is. I'm sorry, but I just looked. If you open up the packet, it's the
Okay.
second link. I know, I thought it wasn't there either at first, but it
Mm.
is. It's the, so it says ARPA wage reimbursement, I think that's just the memo, but underneath where it says firefighters attachment.
Yeah.
And then there's another attachment in there where it says EFD premium pay. So I realize it's a little confusing the way it's presented here, but then you click on EFD, it says premium pay. And then there is a 5-page document that lays it out. So I'm sorry that.
Right, and what specifically in that 5-page document are you making the motion for? That's all I'm asking for clarification. What is are you saying ARPA replacement revenue
Yes.
and 145,000 a year for 3 years?
No, it's 440 to be placed into general fund to cover, right. So it'd be the equivalent of 1/3 of that per year to cover the 1.5 day floating holiday for this year and the following 2 years.
And does our referral need to be that specific? I mean, this does seem to me like look, we want to get the firefighters paid for amounts that are the amounts that are due. Do we have to refer it with that level of specificity, or just say we would like to refer it back to the city council to review discuss the funding, the formula, the mechanism that it gets paid? It sounds
It's
like
my understanding.
Ended.
It's my understanding that at the September 12th council meeting, they want to take action and not have a discussion. Am I correct in that? Or?
Potential, but it can be amended also. There's a lot of time. We can look at it. I say we just refer this. There's been a lot of thought into this to make it the easiest for the city, to make it the most equitable across for all firefighters. I would recommend that we just move this. It can be amended in many different ways. We can, but
Councilmember Kelly and Chair,
Yeah.
if I can jump in real quick.
Yes.
I have a question. So I just want to be clear. Is this a ARPA request or not? Because I mentioned that earlier.
That's what
and
I'm
I think-
confused about.
Is this
No,
an
this
ARPA
is not
request?
an ARPA request, as I'm viewing it. This is this is money that would come from our general fund. The funding may have come from ARPA in that it was, revenue replacement that went to the general fund, but this is really just a general fund reserve request.
But
With
hold
the
on.
proposal-
Hold on real quick. Hold on, because we still have right now, as far as I understand, and Sarah Flax is on the call. Maybe she is the best person to talk about ARPA funds. My understanding is that we have unallocated money in as part of our revenue replacement ARPA bucket that we have not yet done anything with, transfer to general fund or anything else. We have it in this bucket, wherever it is. And we could take money from there for this purpose, is my understanding. So
What it says. That's
it doesn't have to be as complicated as the way it seems like people are describing it right now. Sarah, is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm understanding this.
It is correct that we have money in revenue replacement that could be used for this. However, if we transfer money, a certain amount, to the general fund as revenue replacement, that doesn't constitute actually proving it was expended. So I would much rather that we work out the amounts and have a better way of tracking it, because I spent some time tracking down all the receipts for the $850,000 that was spent on vehicles last year, because there was no structure in place to track things. And we are asked by our single auditors for all this information, and we could be asked for the by Treasury if we were monitored. So it's not a question of the funds being available, but please, we can say an up to amount and it can be paid out of something, but I really do not want it to be transferred into the general fund. That creates a tracking nightmare for us. We have to identify the expenditures. We journal entry them when it's personnel, to an ARPA expense line and track it that way.
So
is there is there a way for us to say we would like to bring the 440,000 to city council based on legal and accounting? They figure out the best way if it's coming from the general fund. Like I would like to get the firefighters paid. I think because we don't have a city manager, this could drag on, but I don't know if I have the depth of knowing which entry should be and legally. So is there some kind of motion we can make like that?
That's the motion on the floor.
Okay.
And what specifically is the motion? I mean, I think
can you repeat the motion then, please?
Yeah, the motion is we have a bunch of documentation before us. We understand that the request is to allocate $440,000, wherever that comes from, whether it's forward, and the council can work out those details on as we move forward. And if, it comes to council at the first meeting in September and we need more information, the council has the ability to table it or to hold it to allow staff more time. But I think moving this forward to council is the right way to flesh all of this out.
And if I could jump back in, I think, again, the dollar amount is what we can move forward.
Right.
I don't even want to take premium pay off the table. I need to better understand the floating holidays, but to me, that type of language, structuring it in that way, is what feels like something that would be discussed during collective bargaining. But if we were to just say premium pay, right, that to me does not feel like something that needs to be negotiated through the collective bargaining process. And so, again, and Councilmember Kelly, I understand you may not agree with me, but I think just forwarding this along as the dollar amount so that we can continue, because what I would want to know is, from our corporation counsel is the fire department ineligible for premium pay, which would help me determine, with my vote, whether I supported it through premium pay or through revenue replacement. But the dollar amount I feel, comfortable about at this point for sure.
Okay.
And that's what my point is. If we just say move the 440 to the council, and that the city manager, finance, and legal should come back and say, this is how we're going to get there. I think that would be much more, then we can get it done, or you can get it done if you guys agree. But I think if we just keep it open-ended, then there's going to be that whole, if they know the 440 is coming out, shouldn't they be able to tell us where and how we can do it in a legal fashion?
Absolutely. I'm in full support of that. I would just say I sense that nobody's actually read the 5-page document. And I'm not saying that, I just want to say, I'm not saying I'm fine with, changing it however it gets paid. But I also would like that to follow it so that people, because even Chief Polyp and I spoke, he also thought this was a really good creative way to address it. So this has been vetted with Chief Polyp, with Firemen's Union. So I just ask that at least go along with it so that it can be considered. I'm not wedded to it. Again, I think this motion's been seconded. So I agree. We can move it forward just so this long worked on document goes along.
This should appear in the packet, Councilmember Kelly, 100%.
Okay, that's all. So should we?
Okay, does Mr. Desai have his hand up? And then I think we need to come to a resolution here.
Well, we have a vote, we have a motion and a second, so we're supposed to.
I think I'm still not clear as to what exactly is it, because it sounds like, is it the whole plan we're voting on, or is it we as a committee agree that we would like to have the fire department members made whole for their for the amount of money that they voluntarily gave up, and that the city legal staff and
city council
and finance
come up with an agreed and appropriate under ARPA or an appropriate funding mechanism. Just I don't see in here in this, and I did read it. Where's the 2-sentence thing that we're actually forwarding? Are we forwarding the entire?
To be clear, my original motion was to move forward $440,000 from this committee to council, and then I got asked for more specificity, so I moved what was in the packet. But my original motion was just to move forward the dollar amount of $440,000 for the firefighters forward to council.
And to be clear, we're not moving that's what's in the packet. I was saying that should appear in the packet at the next level.
Okay.
So that the council members who are on that committee can review it. I would imagine this will go to a standing committee or maybe the council. I don't know.
No, go to council. This committee reports directly to council.
Okay, so this will go to council. So all I was saying is that the work that the plan that is outlined in the packet that was worked on by Councilmember Kelly and others should be included in the packet that the council reviews ahead of this meeting. But what is being moved, and maybe it makes sense, Councilman Reed, just one more time for you to restate your motion so we're clear, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, again, the motion is to move forward $440,000 to council for the firefighters. The council can determine with our legal counsel whether it's this floating holiday plan, which I think could save us money, whether it's premium pay, whether it's whatever it is, but moving forward for an amount not to exceed $440,000 to council for their approval for the fire department.
So we move forward on approximately $440,000 to council for the firefighters on a basis to be agreed. That's
correct?
A fair thing? Yeah. And so then I think we give ourselves enough flexibility that what is in here does not exactly have to be what it is. If there's a more efficient way, and also the city legal staff can review it and make sure that the source of those funds is absolutely appropriate. We want to get the firefighters paid absolutely approximately $440,000. Someone, I'm sure, will review that calculation, but the mechanism of that still can be discussed by council and agreed. I think that's our motion. Okay. So did we already have a second, or are we just voting?
Yeah, we had a second, and you can call the question if you want.
All right, so let's vote. So I think Jess would do a roll call on that.
And Leslie
Councilmember Weed.
Yeah.
Councilmember Weed, she's absent.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma, absent. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Chair Livingston.
Aye.
Committee Member Rikus.
Aye.
And then Committee Member McMillan stated on the record that she supported this. So
great.
Okay. And I think I am sensitive to what Mr. Stonebeck said as well, that we want to make sure that this doesn't become something that is beyond solving this individual sort of problem, and that negotiations and all those sort of technical issues follow the path that they normally would. But we want to get the firefighters funded here. for their.
And I'll just say
general
one
fund.
last time that is, as long as you know that this is coming and going to be discussed at council, if there can be the exact plan of how, where, legally, all the I's dotted and T's crossed, so council can make a decision, because I feel like they've been waiting long enough and it should be resolved.
Right. Okay. So very
More
good.
answers than questions.
On
so.
to the next point. It's, this is a complicated issue, and so anyway, we want to get the firefighters paid in a mechanism that is legally appropriate and discussed by the council. Okay. So, Mr. Lynch, thank you very much for discussing this with us.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your deliberation. I appreciate your input and perspective. Thank you.
Okay. So the next item that I think we wanted to talk about was pilot, right? And then we can go into the financials. Is that correct? That we would go to the pilot?
Yeah, I thought we already discussed this and it seemed like everybody was on board. It's a task force proposal for
right. That's the proposal, is just to have the task force,
right.
Correct? And I do think that it is such a complex issue that it does need some separate focus and not sort of within this committee. It's a complex issue that needs a lot of outside stakeholder involvement. So we probably don't need to discuss it much more unless anybody wants to. I think we just need to create the task force.
Well, no, we would move this again. This goes to council, so we would just forward to council, create it, and they'll do the same thing. So we get it off our plate and we let council.
Right.
I'll make that motion, Chair, if that's fine. I'll move to move the pilot task force forward to council as well. The creation of a pilot task force.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, and I guess we'll have a vote.
Councilmember Ween, absent. Councilmember Newsma, absent. Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Chair Livingston.
Aye.
Committee Member Rikus.
Aye.
And Committee Member McMillan also said on the record that she supported the task force.
I just want to note, that you can maybe put that in the minutes, but someone can't vote if they're not here. You can't, this isn't Springfield where someone can press your yes button for you.
No, she was having bad connection and she was trying to get through. And so I was trying to be here. She was on the line. She might even still be online.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that, just to count her vote officially as a yes, we would just need her actually here.
Right. Okay.
But it moves forward either way. It's got the votes.
Okay, very good. And of course, I think we would all agree that creation of the task force doesn't necessarily, endorse the entirety of the program or legally how it works or any of that. But I think it's something that needs to be separately. It's a complex issue. Many stakeholders will, and that separate task force needs to get into all of those individual issues. Okay. All right. So I think we got those items off. So I think it's time to go over the annual comprehensive financial report.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Livingston. We have the auditors who have formally presented this report. We have Dan Berg and Martha Turtle from the Sikich LLP, our auditors. So it's over to you, Dan or Martha, whoever starts.
Thank you, Hitesh, and thank you, council members, for having us here tonight. So we have previously presented to council the annual comprehensive financial report, and I believe we're here tonight to present once again to the Budget and Finance Committee and to answer any questions on the annual comprehensive financial report that you may have. I believe I can share my screen for you to help. Please let me know if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the annual comprehensive financial report was issued upon the completion of our audit of the city's financial statements for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2021. I will present to you the key items of the report and assist with reading through the financial statements, and you can ask us any questions upon the completion. I'll try to be brief. It is quite a large document, so I'll highlight the key financial items for you. First, I wanted to point out
and excuse me, Martha, sorry to interrupt. Can you go in present mode? I don't know if this has a present mode, so it's larger. I'm on my phone, so I'm trying to.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be very, very small. I
believe I am
there's
on present mode.
There's a way typically to enter into a presentation mode to make because right now we're seeing not only the document, but we're seeing kind of your full screen.
Oh, my panel.
Yeah.
You can close out of the X, the bookmark, just close out of there, and that'll make the screen bigger.
It will. You could also make the plus right at the middle would make each page bigger. Yeah.
Right. I believe what council member is saying is that my panel of individuals is available to see. Is that correct?
And using the plus sign, as was just stated, is another way to get around it. That actually improved it. You could actually probably click it one or two more times or once more, and we'd be good. Yeah, that's
all right. There you go. Thank you. So included within the annual comprehensive financial report is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting issued for the city's prior year annual comprehensive financial report. And we anticipate the city has submitted the financial statements to the GFOA for review, and anticipate that the city will once again be awarded this Certificate of Achievement for the 2021 audit as well. This is an award that's issued by the Government Finance Officers Association for excellence in financial reporting, as is stated here. The requirements including the additional information in the report beyond what is required just by GASB. So a thorough comprehensive financial report is presented to you with information, statistical information, and introductory section that meets the Government Finance Officers requirements. Within the annual comprehensive financial report, the letter of transmittal, which is on pages Roman numeral the pages with Roman numeral numbering, this is prepared by the city's finance and accounting department and provides information in how to read through the annual comprehensive financial report, as well as some additional information as to the general profile of the city, information regarding the budget process, and some background information into the reporting of the financial statements. Following the letter of transmittal is the independent auditor's report, and this is where you'll find the opinion that we have issued on the annual comprehensive financial report. And we are pleased to be able to, we have issued a plain unmodified opinion. This is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can provide on the financial statements. So once again, just to reiterate, thank you to Finance and Accounting for all the preparation and hard work, and for providing us with balances, which we were able to, based on our testing and based on government auditing standards, as well as generally accepted accounting standards, we were able to issue the highest level of opinion on the financial statements. It does take quite a bit of preparation, and we do have a lot of requests as part of our audit procedures. So we're very appreciative of the information provided to us and all the work that's put into preparing for the audit. Another piece of the annual comprehensive financial report, which is a great piece of information to read through, is the management discussion and analysis. This piece is also prepared for you by the Accounting and Finance Department. And what this does is it provides an executive summary of the annual comprehensive financial report. It summarizes some of the significant changes and fluctuations of the balances for different opinion or reporting units, and also provides a little bit of context as to some current year versus prior year changes and what led to those fluctuations, more so than just the balances themselves would provide. So this provides a little bit more context to the reason for and a little bit of analysis as to why balances changed the way they did. So the management discussion and analysis can be found on pages 1 through 8, and this is page number MD&A 1 through 8. And this is as you see here, there are tables which provide you with current year versus prior year and change information, and there's analysis as to what led to those changes. So this is a very thorough document included within the annual comprehensive financial report, and a great summary of the overall changes of the city's activities. The basic financial statements begin with the statement of net position and the statement of activities, and this can be found on page numbers 5 through 8 of the report. The statement of net position and statement of activities highlights for you for the city, the primary government, split by governmental activities and business type activities, which are the city's enterprise funds, as well as information for the component unit, the library component unit. This information is presented to you on a full accrual basis of accounting, which means that you'll have the long-term assets and liabilities included in these balances, which are not necessarily presented to you on a budget versus actual monthly review. So for instance, net pension assets, long-term capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation, your deferred outflows and inflows of resources, which are essentially timing differences, mostly related to the various net pension liabilities for police pension, fire pension, IMRF, and OPEB. Liabilities, including long-term liabilities, so the city's current or due within 1 year debt obligations, as well as those balances due within in total for all the villages, or the city's outstanding debt obligations. And that brings us to the net position for the city's governmental activities, business type activities, and library component unit. As you'll see here, the total net position for the governmental activities, a deficit of $71,750,000. Of that balance, $69,635,000 is net position that is related to net investment in capital assets. So those are the city's capital assets, net of any related debt. The business type or enterprise fund activity has a net position of $309,479,000. Once again, the net position balances include those long-term assets and liabilities. So your pension liabilities, OPEB obligations are included within the calculation of the net position. Statement of activities, which follows the statement of net position, provides the program revenues compared to the functional expenses for the city, once again presented to you for governmental activities and business type activities or your enterprise funds. And this is where you see what drove the changes in your net position. So there was an increase in net position from the prior year in governmental activities of 42 million, an increase in enterprise or business type activities of 8.8 million on the full accrual basis of accounting. The governmental funds balance sheet follows the statement of activities, and this is the city's governmental funds presented to you on a modified accrual basis of accounting. So this is presented to you more in line with what you're seeing on a monthly basis and does not include those long-term assets and liabilities. Here is where you'll be able to find the fund balances of the individual major funds. the general fund, the debt service fund, and then all other non-major funds. So other governmental funds that are considered to be non-major in aggregate. There is much more detailed information on the non-major aggregate funds or non-major governmental funds further in the report, as well as individual fund statements for the general fund, the debt service fund, and each non-major fund on a budget versus actual basis further in the report. This summarizes the activity itself. As you'll see, the general fund fund balance ending on December 31st of 33.6 million, and overall governmental funds fund balance ending December 31st of 73.5 million. The statement of revenues, expenses, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds presents to you the revenues versus expenditures, and in addition to any other financing sources or uses, which includes issuance of any debt, premium, payments to escrow agents, and then transfers between funds. This is where you'll see the changes in fund balance. So the general fund increased fund balance of 14.9 million for the fiscal year, and that does include 9.1 million of transfers in. Ultimately, the governmental funds in total had an increase in fund balance of 22.2 million for that total ending fund balance of 73.5 million that you see here. Similarly, there are statements for the proprietary funds or the individual major enterprise funds of the city, the water fund, sewer fund, solid waste, motor vehicle parking system fund, as well as the internal service fund activities. The enterprise funds are presented on a full accrual basis of accounting, so the summary total column is what you know, it's what was presented on the statement of activities at the front of the basic financial statements. Also included in the basic financial statements are the summarized fiduciary funds. So this is the city's police pension fund and firefighters pension fund balances in total. Footnotes to the financial statements include much information regarding the significant accounting policies of the city. I'll just note that there have been no changes to, or no pronouncements implemented in this fiscal year that impacted the presentation of the footnotes. Pages 24 through 78 is where you'll find the footnotes. It's quite a bit of information. You will find some very detailed information as to the city's debt roll forward. So you'll see beginning balances of debt, issuances and reductions of debt, any payments made, as well as the ending balances by for both governmental activities and enterprise funds or business type activities, as well as capital asset information of the same detail in the footnotes. So that's some great information to look to, as well as some information on regarding the various retirement funds. So the IMRF, police pension, firefighters pension, as well as the other post-employment benefits. Following the footnotes is where you'll find some of the combining and individual fund financial statements. So as I noted previously, there is a lot of detailed information for budget versus actual for each of the individual funds within the city's annual comprehensive financial report. Here is where you can find original and final budget numbers, as well as actual audited balances for each of the individual funds. So if you're looking to see how each fund performed as compared to the budgeted amounts, this is where you'll find that information. So you have that information for the general fund, the debt service fund, and then further for all of those individual non-major funds, as well as the enterprise funds and fiduciary trust funds. And then finally, there is a section of the report called the Statistical Section, and this is pages 134 through 159. And what's within this section is a lot of historical information. Many of these tables are presented on a 10-year historical basis, and there are certain tables that are presenting current year compared to 9 years prior. So here's where you'll find some very valuable information as to how the city's financials have trended over the past 10 years. You can take into consideration the years that were mostly impacted by COVID and look back to prior to 2019 to see how the city's current year has come in comparison to what would be considered more normal times. So this historical 10-year information is also presented to you on a variety of key factors. You'll find your net position changes, fund balances for the governmental funds, as well as revenue, tax information, and operating indicators and such for 10 years of data. So that's a summary of how to read through the annual comprehensive financial report. As I noted, it has quite a bit of information, and I believe the report should have been made available to you. So hopefully you've had a chance to review it. Otherwise, if you have any questions for us at this time, I can answer those.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions. If anybody else does before me. Otherwise, I'll keep this very brief. I have my own copy here. I've actually printed it out, and if not been all the way through it. I also like to thank you for. There's a detailed file that Mr. Desai has sent me. I'm, as the group knows, I'm trying to get to sort of an Excel-based historical and projection model, and there's a detailed file that I've been given that I think comes from your firm. Not sure where. Maybe it's from the finance department, but I've been using that as well. So. I'm about ready to talk to Hitesh about that in more detail. So one question I have, and I come from a corporate environment where the timing is much faster. In your experience, and I know that we are completely in line with what we've historically done with the issuance of this report, with Evanston's issuance of this report. But is the timing of the issuance of this audit typical of your city and village clients? Is it normally sort of a summer after or 6 months after the year-end close sort of activity?
Yes. So the requirement for the state is to file within 6 months of the fiscal year end. For a city with the amount of operations such as the city of Evanston, there's a lot of information that isn't available immediately upon the end of the fiscal year. There are a lot of receivables balances that are not able to be calculated until 60 or 90 days post fiscal year end. So in order to have the fully adjusted trial balances available and eliminate as much estimation as possible, there is definitely a lot of time that's required to fully close the fiscal year end books, and filing by that June 30 deadline is what is required by the state. So that is pretty common for especially a larger municipality with such significant operations, where it takes a lot of work on finance and accounting side to adjust the balances to provide to us in order for us to perform our testing and be able to compile and issue the financial statements that you have in front of you.
And David, just quickly, I would add one thing what Martha said. Like a typical example is our big revenue, sales tax, use tax, home rule sales tax. They are 3 months behind. So December actual numbers come in March, and that's when we can book actual numbers for the December. So
and that's not
one example. Yeah.
That's something you get from an outside party.
From the state of Illinois.
From the state. Okay, so that is understandable.
Another complication is the actuary reports we need for the police and fire, which they generally want audited financial statements to work off of. So we hit those first, get those off to the actuary, and that sometimes delays the report as well. We shoot to have it done before June 30 and did last year. This year we're a week later. But the goal is to present at the June City Council meeting every year.
Okay, understand. Thank you. And finally, do you do an internal control report as part of your work as well?
We do not issue an opinion on internal controls. However, as part of our audit procedures, we do review internal controls and gain an understanding and provide any comments back to the city's finance and accounting, as well as the council in our council communication. If we were to note any areas where we found issues needing improvement over the controls, any what we consider to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies based on the review that we perform.
Okay, so is that report available to us? Was there a formal report issued on internal controls?
Not on
this thing, but
or recommendations. A report might be too formal of a word, but any discussion of internal control. I might be. I'm an accountant by trade. Don't really do it in my current role more specifically, but might be interested in understanding any communications relative to internal controls, and especially any significant.
There should have been the council communications sent to the board as
all the reports. All the 3 reports are posted on the city website along with the audit.
Okay, all right. Okay. I will then look for that. Sorry, I did not see that before. Okay.
I can add that there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that were related to internal controls that we noted. Otherwise, those would have been addressed in those communications.
Correct.
Got it. And I know that we segregation of duties becomes more difficult if there are open positions and all that. So it sounds like you're still fundamentally comfortable that all the underlying controls that we should have are functioning appropriately.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good, thank you, and I'll look for that. I'll look for that report. One other point, and I've talked about this in multiple meetings. I sort of would really like us to try to find a way to focus on some, where do we have unnecessary complexity, and are there ways to simplify things? And maybe at some point, if you notice that, we could even discuss it. But how do we? If we look at the number of funds and other things, are there things that the city has done that have just evolved over time that are making the close process, the reporting process, the management of the city maybe more difficult than it needs to be? Sort of non-value added complexity, right? And don't expect an answer now, but maybe we could talk about that at some point, or if you have thoughts. Are our underlying systems and structure, number of funds, for example, number of account classifications, are there things that maybe you could help us understand? Are there simpler ways to get to a reliable set of financial statements that would be simpler and faster and easier? So I don't expect you to talk about that now, but maybe we can even talk that sort of separately. Okay.
As we go through our audit annually, if we see anywhere that the city can be more efficient or get us information more efficiently, we certainly talk to staff about that concurrent with our testing and pulling information. And over time, there are some efficiencies built into the audit process. A city the size of Evanston, with the number of departments and revenue sources, and it's a huge organization that's very complicated. So I'm sure, especially since the economic downturns of 2008 and the recession, things got a little more tight, personnel wise, et cetera. And there were certain efficiencies made then, and they are consistently throughout the year. We would certainly bring that to your attention if we found more.
Okay. Very good. I don't have anything else. Does anyone else have any questions about the financials? Thank you for all the hard work on this. I'm sure it's a very detailed report.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Council member Kelly.
Would you be able to, if this is too much to ask, I know I can find these also, but just by the major fund, could you tell us where there are, what surpluses there were by funder?
So the,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the major funds were, as Martha said, in the very front of the report. On page 10 is the balance sheet, fund balances. On page 101 of the report is the beginning of the non-major funds, and it shows all of the fund balances individually starting there. Is that what you're referring to, Council?
Yeah, I guess that would be it. I can go through it. I just wondered if you had a total on surplus, or.
Additionally, there's a note to the financial statement that gives a little bit more equity information on page 52. That's primarily the assigned fund balances. It describes what the assignments are within the general fund.
Great.
Right. And those,
So in
those
terms
are
of
point in time
unassigned-
metrics, right? Sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
So unassigned funds,
The only funds that are unassigned will be in your general fund unless there's a deficit. Any positive fund balances outside the general fund need to be restricted, committed, or assigned.
okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
And that detail regarding the restricted, committed, and assigned balances, as Dan mentioned, is page 100, 101, and it continues. There's quite a few funds, so but around the 100 page mark, the individual fund balances.
Great. Thank you.
And do we have an unusual number of funds?
You have more than many of our villages. The more complicated the entity, the more funds oftentimes. And one of the things that complicates that for you is the number of TIF districts, which requires separate fund accounting to be accountable to the joint review boards, and your special service areas as well. They each require separate funds to account for them separate individually in order to be transparent for those. I think that lends itself to significantly more funds than in a smaller village or a smaller entity. You also have a fair number of capital project funds. That's not overly concerning, though. Those come and go as the funding sources are used.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Councilmember Reed.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone from the team, for all of your thorough work on this. I do have one question. Since we're speaking about the great number of funds that the city of Evanston has, I'm wondering about your thoughts, or if this has come up in any other municipality that you have worked with. You're talking about, a special fund, or I'm sorry, I should say a separate fund for SSAs, a separate fund for TIFs. Have you all dealt with, not expecting you guys maybe to know this, but state law, a recent court determination says that municipalities must, there's a transportation lockbox amendment passed at the state level a few years ago. I think it's 2016 or 2017. That requires that the initial interpretation was that it required that the state create a lockbox for all transportation related funds, and that includes wheel tax, that includes tickets, other fees and fines, anything related to transportation. This is the Illinois Road Workers Association versus Cook County. And so Cook County is now in the process of creating a transportation fund for their $280 million that they receive from transportation revenue. The city of Evanston does not have a transportation lockbox yet. I think it's really important for us, for just accounting standards, to comport with the state constitution and this recent court decision. So sorry for that long introduction, but do you know of any other municipalities that have a transportation fund? It looks like Dan is saying no.
No, the only fund that every village, city, and county have is, as Martha just flipped to, is the motor fuel tax fund.
Correct.
And that's coming from IDOT. To be honest with you, I'm not aware of that legislation, but I'll definitely be looking into it in the very, very near future.
Yeah, it's the Illinois, I think it's Illinois Road Workers or Illinois something workers versus Cook County, who's just decided this year that says that the transportation lockbox amendment also applies to units of local government. So just throwing that out there, and maybe this will be a first. I think all municipalities in Illinois are catching up, because originally the thought wasn't that it applied to local units of government. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. Great. So,
Thank you, Dan.
thank you.
Martha again.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Mr. Desai, I think we have two remaining items here, right?
I would request, if you don't mind, Dave Stonebeck has been there, and Sarah, obviously. We have that, or not the Sarah, but particularly Dave Stonebeck, the transfer of funds. Let's see.
Right, of the solid waste fund
Yeah,
status.
so if
Yeah, I
you
was
can take
suggesting
up
we
that
talk about
one,
that next.
Yeah. So we will give it to the Dave.
Okay.
Hi again, Dave Stoneback, interim deputy city manager, but my previous job was to be the public works director, and as part of that, the solid waste fund falls under public works. And I sent there's a memo attached to the packet that talks about our current status, and then I'm going to attempt to share my screen as well, and hope that this works, because I'm a newbie at this too. No.
I wonder,
If you want to,
should we have Jess try to bring it up? Would that be?
Just doesn't have it.
are you seeing the share your screen icon at the bottom of your screen?
Yes. Okay, I'm starting to get there now. Okay, so I'm hoping that you see the table.
Yeah. Could make it bigger, maybe.
Yeah.
A plus.
I don't see the plus.
Plus is like,
if you look right in the middle, it's next to the hand icon, right under the tab that says SWF01B PDF.
your cursor's almost on it. Just the right.
I'm clicking on it, but it doesn't seem to be getting bigger.
I don't see your cursor, actually.
I see an arrow.
Yeah,
I think that's just an icon that's on the
Oh, sorry. Thought that was.
you don't see me moving the arrow around?
no. Oh, yeah, I do. Yep. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. I'm sorry. Okay, so the solid waste fund generally has revenue coming in. The majority of our revenue is from a service charge placed on the containers that they have out there for solid waste. We also have some property tax that is coming in to the solid waste fund as well. So the solid waste fund was like $1.8 million in the negative fund balance when I started in 2016 or 17 in Public Works, and we have really worked hard to try to get up into a positive fund balance. And you can see that at the end of 22, we're we're projecting to be $232,000 in the negative yet. So this particular slide shows an 11% rate increase for our services. So you can see here that we right now we're bringing in $3.36 million. If we impose the 11% rate increase, we would bring in $3,729,000. And apartment would go up a little bit, and condo refuge would go up a little bit as well. So that would allow us to increase our fund balance by $289,500. We'd have a positive balance of $57,000. And then the following year, no rate increase. We're still doing okay. We're bringing the fund balance up a little bit more. But in 2025, we start going in the negative again, and we still have a positive fund balance of $80,000. And again, we're supposed to have a 16.67% fund balance, and we'll strive to get there at some point. But for right now, we just want to try to get in the black instead of the red. If we impose the 11% rate increase, and I'm just going to highlight the 95-gallon cart because that's what the majority of our residents have. They're currently paying on an annual basis $275,000. If we impose the 11% rate increase, they would pay $305 a year, or $30 more a year than what they currently are. Another option to look at, and only involving rate increases again, is instead of having an 11% rate increase in 1 year, we could have a 6.5 1 year and another 6.5 the second year. And you can see that the charges go up here again, and our fund balance winds up pretty much the same. It does, because you do the two separate ones, the 95 goes from 275 up to 312. And I'll stop there. I see Councilmember Reed has a question.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was just getting in the line, but I guess I'll just ask now, or just state now, that I would love to see that rate increase spread out over as many years as we can. So if we, I mean, heck, if this is where the projection that we see, let's make a small increase this year, a small increase next year is what I'd much rather see than, a large jump at once. But let's spread it out.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'd still like to show some other options yet, if I could.
Sorry.
So,
yeah.
The two options that I showed right now only deal with rate increases. The next option that is coming up on the screen now shows a property tax increase, a 1% property tax increase. That would be, we would increase the property tax in 2022, so we realize the revenue in 2023, and we show that property tax staying for 2023 and 2024, and then again reducing it in 2025, taking that increase away, and we're showing a 2.2% rate increase up here. So everybody sees a property tax increase, and then you see a small rate increase, and the projection is only through 2025, a 3-year look ahead. That's all we're trying to get at right now. And then down here, you'll see the charge goes to $280, so it's only $6 more than what they're paying on the service charge, but not a big jump. And I'm sorry, Councilmember Reed.
And if you see my hand go up while you're speaking, don't feel obligated. You can get through. But again, I'm just gonna. I want to let you finish all of your options. But many of the council members, I wasn't alive then, but there's the George Bush Sr. Read my lips, no new taxes. Many of us said, read our lips, no new property taxes. So I think that option is going to be a very difficult one for this council. And unlike George Bush Sr., I think we plan to stick to that. So I think that one's going to be a hard one to get through this council.
Okay. And again, it's just, I have to present them and
Yep.
I'm seeking direction tonight is all I'm doing. So I appreciate that. And then the last option I show is a $1 million transfer from the general fund reserve, and then a one-time 3% rate increase in 2023, which again gets us to right around the same fund balance at the end of 25. And we go from 274 to 283. And so it's only $8 more a year put on the customers, if you will. And then the last one is a similar type thing where we ask for $1 million transfer from the general fund in 22. And then we spread the rate increases out where it's, 1.8% over the 2 years. And those are basically, so there's three options. Just do everything by rate increases is the first option. And then there's an option A and an option B. You do it all in 1 year or you spread it out over several years. Option 2 was to raise property taxes and have minor rate increases. And then option 3 was no property tax increase, $1 million transfer, a one-time $1 million transfer from the general fund reserves into the solid waste fund in 22. And then again, a lot lower, I should say, service rate increases to the residents. So those were three options. I'd like to hear the committee's opinion so that I'm not sure if I have to write a referral or what, but to determine how we would go about it, because in 23 some action needs to take place or we would wind up going further negative into the fund balance. So that's what I have, and I'd be glad to try to answer questions or preferably seek direction from the committee as to which option they would like to pursue. Councilmember Kelly?
Yeah, so I'd say there's a lot of information we still don't have. So we know that we're saving enormous amounts of money, unfortunately, in staffing. Every year we have probably at least 2 million probably in lag pay. Normally this year it's going to be a lot more. So in terms of, and I know even at the end of last year, we didn't figure this in when we did our budget calculations. We ended up with double the amount in our transfer tax. We budgeted for 3, we ended up with 6. So there's a lot of surplus monies at the end of the year that I think we'll be able to offset 23 and 24. I would ask that we do everything, and I think we're going to have the funds to be able to keep those taxes flat. Everybody's suffering this year with inflation. I asked, and everybody's tightened their belts in the city. I think we need to do the same. And we need to consider, again, an incredible surplus that we're going to have as a result of staffing numbers this year. That was where all budgeted for that surplus fund. So I'm going to strongly advocate that 23 remain flat again, even to try and decrease it, given that we do have had ARPA funding as well. All of that should help us to offset costs. So I think we absolutely shouldn't be advocating at this point for any increase in 23.
Well,
and I think with that in mind, we assess what we're spending money on. We have to really understand, again, I'm going to be saying the difference between want versus need in our effort to keep the property tax levy flat.
And that's why I gave options without any property tax increase. But so, all right, we'll throw property option 1 out without any property tax increase. So the other options are, do we only raise the rates to the users of the solid waste fund, or do we include a transfer of the general fund reserves, which would then minimize the rate increases on garbage collection from the solid waste fund? So the solid waste fund does not have excess money in it. You know, its fund balance is in the negative now.
Mhm.
And we're trying to bring it to the positive. Or if you want, we can have it go further back into the negative again and not take any action at all. But what we've been trying to do over the past several years was improve the fund balance from being 1.8 million in the hole to the ultimate goal of, by the budget policy, is to have, you know, 2 months surplus in there, which means we should have a balance of approximately $1.3 million. I'm just trying to get into the black.
Yeah. So if I could ask a question, maybe ask Mr. Desai, what's the consequence of having this be a negative fund balance?
I mean, there is no kind of legal consequence that, okay, auditors might put it in the report like they do right now for insurance fund, which is running negative balance SSA 9. But like, you know, in your personal life, we can't have the negative in somebody. So some other fund would be kind of loaning that cash in a sense, you know. Yeah, that's the kind of reality. But there is no legal thing, yeah, which would kind of prohibit us from, running the deficit.
All right. And it does seem that this should be, this type of service, we should be charging enough that we're not running a deficit.
Right. This is like an enterprise fund. So
it's like an enterprise fund.
Sewer, parking, it should be, supported by the user fee revenue. So
yeah. So it would seem that we would at least want to raise the user fees. And I realize we have to continue to, you know, be as efficient as we can on cost, but that we would want to raise the user fees enough that we are at least reinstating a break-even sort of funding mechanism. So you can see at the 1.8, we're still negative, about 100 grand a year or so. So I mean, I would propose that we, you know, if we think that those are the correct projected expenses, and they you know, there's going to be some degree of personnel of raises and all. I don't know if things like pension are in here, but that we will at least want to make sure that we're generating enough revenue to have, you know, a break even sort of operation. And
that's what we have been doing. We have been adjusting rates over the past couple of years. We did not adjust them in 22. It just, again, knowing that there is a fair amount of money in the general fund reserve. And part of the reason that it's so far in the negative was at one time there was an annual transfer of funds from the general fund to the solid waste fund. And we've been trying to avoid that and raise our rates appropriately. One of the biggest challenges that we have is yard waste collection. And previous councils have not wanted to charge the actual cost of operating a yard waste collection. And that is something that's very hard for staff to calculate, because we sell the stickers that get put on bags. Well, we sell the stickers to stores that then resell them to the public. So we don't have the actual, we'll sell 500 stickers, packets of 500 stickers to Jewel. We don't know how many of those stickers they have left over in their cash register drawer at the end of the year. So we're guessing at that. With our yard waste carts, we sell them the cart for $82.50 to purchase the cart, but then we only charge them $25 a year to service that cart. And that's, previous city council did not want to increase that cost for yard waste. So it's very challenging. And again, I'm seeking direction from the committee here as to how they would like us to proceed, so I can have some backing from the committee moving forward as I make recommendations to the Administration and Public Works Committee and the City Council.
So May I just ask a question? Did we, was this on our agenda to?
It is on the
Right.
agenda for discussion.
For
Okay.
discussion. And primarily it's the, I think it's the discussion of the potential
Solid.
transfer of fund
And,
balance.
and I can send, I'm sorry, getting the council packet out for Monday and then getting tonight's packet out and other things. I was only able to work with my management analysts and get these tables crafted yesterday. So,
Oh, that's,
but I can package them up and send them out as a PDF.
Mhm. Okay. So it sounds like you believe that the yard waste bin fee is significantly understated on the actual cost.
It absolutely is. We have a separate contract for yard
Mhm.
waste collections,
Mhm.
and it's not shown out here specifically. It's buried in the contractual cost because we hire an outside vendor to pick up the yard waste for us. But our revenue between selling the stickers and the $25 annually for picking up yard waste bins for 8 months out of the year, for those that have them. Not everybody in Evanston has a yard waste bin. A lot of people still, they don't, they only collect leaves in the fall, so they get bags and they put stickers on it. Other residents are mowing their grass and bagging the grass, or they have an outside landscaper come and take care of it for them. But our challenge is we are not breaking even on our cost for yard waste charges.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was previous city council's opinion was that's something that the city has to provide, and that's why the property taxes is kind of in there. That's why we're getting the $1.3 million a year. Kind of offsets the yard waste charges. But our contracts with our haulers, it's built into their contract that they'll get an annual rate increase of a minimum of 1.5 and a maximum of 3.5 based on the consumer price index in the Chicagoland area. So if it's between those, they get what it is. A couple of years ago, it was less than 1.5. They were getting 1.5. I'm assuming this year it's going to be well over 3.5, but they'll get 3.5.
And they're not getting a fuel surcharge or anything like that?
No, there's no fuel surcharge allowed. So it's at their risk.
Councilmember Kelly.
so I would agree with Chair Livingston to either assess rates so that it funds itself, but I would be even more inclined to look at our various funds and to bring to council, to have council approve a transfer where we have that surplus, like some of those surpluses that I mentioned, but certainly not to raise the levy overall.
Okay, so if I'm understanding so I'm recommending in the option that's up on the screen right now is that we would transfer $1 million from the general fund reserve, which we talked about having a lot of funds in it, and even in the presentation that's just going to show yet now, and I already did at City Council where he was showing potential uses of that reserve. He shows $1 million transfer from the general fund reserve to the solid waste fund. And then if we get that $1 million transfer, we can have 2% rate increases in 23 and another 2% rate increase in 24. And that will be matching more or less what our contractual services costs are increasing as well. And I think that that would be a good way to keep the fund above, out of the negative. It won't get us to the 16.67% fund reserve that we should have for the budget policy.
Councilmember Reid.
Yeah, I actually I fully support that, Dave. And both Daves. I support the $1 million transfer. Support the whatever percent raise over the next few years. I do think that all of these. I really think that's the point of having enterprise funds. Essentially, is to try to make them as self-sufficient as possible. And so, that I'm certainly supportive of trying to get this both build that reserve and make sure that we're actually recouping the cost for providing the service or figuring out ways to bring down the cost for the service. I'm certainly interested in reviewing some European models of trash collection that could bring down cost. But, however we do that, whether it's rate increases or working to bring down cost overall, that's happy to get there.
And again, we're not showing past 2025 because with our sustainability goal, one of the things that staff is looking at is the potential to require everybody to have a yard waste cart so that food scrap can go into it. And that would help lower our solid waste costs minimally, but then you have a new cost of picking up if every customer has a yard waste cart, then that cost of service increases. And then there's also concern, is there enough room for people to have 3 carts in their backyard between solid waste cart, the recycling cart, and a yard waste cart. So it's in the works within the next couple of years, and it will be something that Brian Zimmerman has already begun discussions with the Environment Board about this and laying out some proposals, and will slowly work its way up through the Environment Board to, I believe they report to Human Services and then the City Council. So, but it's a CARP goal to reduce solid waste and providing yard carts to everybody, which would be a new model, changing all of our work here would be something that we'd have to look at as well. So that's why I'm just kind of focusing on the 23 and 24 and trying to make sure that we're staying in the positive through 25.
Okay.
So I know Councilmember Reed thought that option 2B that's up on the screen now, the $1 million transfer from the general fund reserve, and then minimal rate increases on the solid waste service charges is what seems to be what I'm hearing from the committee. Is that I don't need a vote, more or less like thumbs up or yes, that looks good. Or
I would just encourage you to try, I know it'd be hard to do, figure out the mispricing on the $25 fee for the cart, right? It doesn't seem like that's necessarily a group of people that should be, I have one, okay, but I mean, should that be a group that's getting an inherent subsidy, right?
Well, and it's also everybody that uses the bag as well. I forget what the sticker is, but that's between collecting bags and yard waste carts, we aren't making it, and the number of bags collected is hard to do because again, it's not city staff collecting it, and it's our vendor, and they're not really counting how many bags they pick up. They just pick them up and keep going. And then the stickers are being sold by, I think we sell them.
It's hard to calculate, but so, I mean, if there's a way to estimate, maybe there's not.
Yeah,
should the yard weight cost be
informed.
$50 a year rather than 25, so anyway.
And I just wanted to quickly chime in. Actually, that this last part of the discussion is something I'm really interested in because we talk a lot with our sustainability work having incentive programs. So I think for the community members that can burden more of the cost for that program, should pay it. And if people express hardship, and again, we need to at some point figure out what those incentive programs are. But if they express hardship, then we have the ability to to provide discounts to those individuals. But I would be really interested to see what we could do to raise that cost, seeing as how it's something that we need to do more of in order to, or I'm assuming we need to do more of in order to keep up with our climate action and resiliency work. And then also in an upcoming council discussion, I believe we're going to be talking about how we would like to commit general fund reserve money, as well as surplus money, which is probably the same thing, but above that fund balance that we want to keep of 16% or whatever it is. So again, I'm generally supportive, but also want to reserve this conversation for that discussion whenever we're going to have it. And this obviously could be one of the items that we consider, but my understanding was, again, on the 12th or at some future meeting, we were going to discuss this. So
yes, that is the plan, to talk about ARPA and actually the fund balance, the general fund balance. It was fairly well discussed last night or Monday night. Yeah, last night.
Yeah, last night.
In the presentation that Hitesh did at the 6 months. So that last slide showed general fund balance and what has already been allocated and what staff believes is going to be necessary moving forward into 23.
Okay. So it is after 8. I mean, Mr. Stoneback, do you have the guidance you think you need?
I believe so. Yeah, I will be moving forward with option 2B, the $1 million transfer, and the minimal rate increases each year rather than one big
Okay.
one. Thank you.
So for our I think it's our last item is the mid-year financials. I wonder if the council members already went through this, would it be viable to have Mr. Desai send the information to the three of us that are not on the council, and maybe we could get.
I mean, it is the council packet, but if you want, yes, I can PDF it to you. Yeah. Because even we included the presentation in the board packet for the city council. So it's out there on the City of Evanston website.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can, it might be, if you could maybe send it to Sherry, me and
Okay.
Leslie. Especially since Leslie's not here, if everyone else has already been through it. I am very interested in it. I want to talk to you more about this multi-year analysis I've been working on. I want to integrate that in there. But Sherry, if you're okay with that, then maybe we could talk
I'm fine.
separately about it and not have other people go through it again.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But I agree. We kind of talked about that, like the 5-year, that would be good to see.
Yeah, I'll send you where I am on that, but I want to talk to Hitesh about it further as well.
Okay.
And Chair, I just want to quickly correct the record. I meant subsidy programs and not incentive programs. Subsidy programs is what we need to come up with. Just want to, for the minute's sake.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we went through a lot of ground today, and I think we probably ended up with an agenda that maybe we got overly
One
ambitious.
thing I think, I don't know, is it in the agenda? I guess about that update, what do you call? Let me see, the line of credit.
The line of credit. I'm sorry.
Right, and real quick, I mean, I just give you, I'll be 5 minutes if you want to have a direction, but
you should talk about that. I apologize.
I briefly touched on this subject and told the council last night about the line of credit requirement, not just because that, okay, you guys felt that, yeah, we should not issue the bond in the current environment, but the second thing is the Cook County second installment of property tax is delayed. And that's where I might need the money, some of the funds, like debt service fund, without that funding, we would have a tough time, or kind of way, unless I transfer the funds from other fund to pay off our December 1st debt service. So obviously that is one of the things. In terms of, like, I got the response, one response I just got from one of the bank, and without saying the names of the two local banks, the rate is right around 370 to 380 for a $15 million line of credit. Both the banks said we won't charge the unused fee, but one of the banks said we might charge, at least they've proposed $15,000. I just looked at it, received it today, $15,000 closing fee, but they are charging the rate at 100 basis point plus 30-day SOFR term. The other bank is charging 30 days SOFR plus 150 basis point, but no closing cost. So it depends. Yeah, if we use the funds line of credit, 5 million, 10 million, whatever, any piece of that, then it might be better to go with the lower rate. If we just kind of keep it open, yeah, we don't need it, if in case. But particularly with the property tax delay, and looks like the Cook County has sent the email offering the funding to some of the distressed communities, it looks like it could be a 4 to 6 month delay. And particularly, as I mentioned, in debt service principal and interest due December 1st, I'm roughly short 5 to 6 million in debt service. The other funds which receive the funding from the tax levy, police pension, fire pension, library. Library is cutting and too close. They have around 3 million in fund balance and cash balance. And if they don't get any second installment by the December end, they must have used their entire cash balance. So, at the same time, I reach out to our financial advisor again, that, okay, what kind of a market is that, and what is your experience in the last week about the market? And that rate, he says that they issued just one level 20-year bond with around 3.2%. So he said the market has really improved. There are a lot of transactions versus the couple of months back in June when we got the preliminary numbers. So I just wanted to share this kind of bigger scenario. Obviously, I talked to the council last night, and what are your feelings there real quick?
So once you get the installment, would you have adequate funds to pay? Is it just you need a bridge to get you through December? So, I mean, that's the time you use a line of credit, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's an interim cash flow sort of mechanism. If you can avoid a long-term bond, and again, rates still are relatively high. Councilmember Kelly.
So I agree to take the line of credit instead, but firstly, please look at surplus. Again, we weren't able to get the total balance on savings from staffing this year, but where we can, I would say even better than the short term right now, look at our surplus balances.
Okay, so I mean, I see here that about the line of credit, because it's more like a bridge. You're right. Yeah, we will get that property tax, so it's a matter of time, 4 months, 5 months. Do we guys have any opinion on the capital projects funding for 22, which were approved by the council last fall as a part of 22 budget? As the rates have improved, and it's better than even line of credit rate, as of now.
And how much is that required funding?
I mean, it was around 15 million too. Okay. I mean, some of them is not property taxes, it's like paid for by I think the water fund and all that. So it's like a tax levy supported debt is around, I think, 9 or 10 million, 9 million. Yeah, even we can fund the library out of their own fund balance,
But have you done like a full projection of money coming in and money needed to go out to see if we're going to have a deficit there? Do we really need the bonds, or do we just need short-term coverage?
I mean, here's the thing. Yes, we can continue to do what, I don't know what's the kind of play the game where, okay, if the money comes due, we'll pay. But this $10 million or whatever the fund balance, 8 million in the CIP fund, it's all identified for the projects which were approved by the council. And they are at some stage, whether it's in initial design, architecture, whatever, engineering service. Sometimes, as I said, some of the projects like IDOT is notorious for delayed billing, sometimes by years. So that's why we are sitting on cash, so we have to look at that, yes, whether we want to kind of play the game and wait and use the line of credit in the worst scenario. If IDOT comes next day and say, yep, pay this $5 million, and yeah, we kind of draw upon this thing instead of issuing the bond.
So what would be your recommendation?
I mean, my recommendation is, here's the thing, I mean, yes, and I mean, see this thing that, okay, yeah, we have some fund balance, at some point, and particularly I'm talking about projects, okay, even if we go with, let's say, line of credit, at some point we have to have it there, because these are a long term, The other thing which I realized, that I don't issue the bonds, because whenever I issue the bonds, we send the bond order and bond ordinance to the Cook County, so they levy for it. Now, if I don't do that, it has to be funded. That, like, if I take a line of credit, the interest and principal has to come out of our own fund balances, our own cash, because the county won't levy that. So that is the other consideration, I mean, if the committee feels that, yeah, let's wait for the market, if it gets better, more favorable even than this one, goes under 3%. I mean, I guess, yeah.
I don't think we should play that. I mean, I think that if you truly think you're going to need it.
I mean, I would need the money. You are right. Remember, right? But it is a matter of when I would need it, as we see that, okay, there is a fund balance. Why don't you draw up on certain? So I could wait a month or two. If the payments come due for $1 million or $2 million, yes, we have the cash in our fund balance or cash balance, and I can draw upon that. And meanwhile, see if there is a chance of market improving, even at something like 50 basis point, that would be a big saving,
Well, from all that I know, and I don't have a crystal ball, I mean, rates could go up and we could get stuck. So
right.
Is there a compromise? Like maybe you do 3/4 of it as a bond and you could get the line with, I like the one without the fee, because if we don't use it, we're paying, I mean, I guess you'd have to figure all that out, but.
And I'm sorry to, I mean, let's keep that in mind. I propose to use that line of credit mainly for my property tax delayed, because there are certain payments which I'll have to make, so like, as I said, debt service payment coming due. So right now I was putting the numbers together, and the debt service fund is short around $5.5 to $6 million, which is generally a second installment, and if it doesn't come by December 1st, I have to make the payment. Now, either I find the money in 3 different funds where I can legally take it as a loan and then give it back as soon as I, get the property tax money, or I use a line of credit to have a kind of a clean accounting wise, that, okay, I draw upon $5 million for debt service, put it there. As soon as a month or 2 months later, I get the money, I pay off that line of credit.
It does seem that there should be some element of a line of credit in our capital structure to deal with exactly what you're talking about, temporary liquidity needs, and not play games with other funds, right? So
yeah, I agree with that.
I think, what's the right number to cover short-term needs for situations like the property tax delay? Okay.
And that should be line of credit. I mean, I absolutely agree, because we know for sure that we will get that money.
And then for the capital, I think we could, we should probably look at, the rates have improved. Maybe the market has improved somewhat. It probably is better than a month ago when we talked about it. I think at that time, it would be uncertain if we could have even gotten a bond deal done. So if we're more confident now that it's a robust market and the rates have normalized, then we could consider.
Do we want to until the next, at least? So that's why, because if we want to have a kind of move forward, obviously I have to go to the council with the ordinance. If the committee feels that, let's wait at least 1 more month to see the trend. I mean, I'm just like trying to get the interest of the committee members and the thoughts about the council members.
How much are you thinking about?
The total plan is, I think, 14 or 15 million. Out of that, 9 million is tax supported, others funded by the, I think, the TIF funds and the enterprise fund.
So 9 million?
Or 9 million is a tax supported debt, and the other 5 or 6 million would be a debt, but it would be paid for by other funds.
Wait, so how much bond would you go out for?
I think it is around 15 million original, 15 million. I think I'll have to check the amount. But
even if 9 million's coming in?
No. Hold on, sorry. The total GEO bond proposed amount was, I think, 15 million. The 9 million number is what we call a tax supported. mean, we have to levy for it, that it's paid for by the property tax. The other 6 million is paid for by the other funds, like water fund revenues, parking fund revenue, TIF fund revenue. So it's not a tax levy increase because of that bond issue.
Chair, was all of this in the packet?
No, this is not in the thing, that because, as I said, I just got the proposal, one of the proposal today, and obviously I will have to come to the council. Yeah, I will have to.
What I'm saying is, I would prefer all this information in a memo, and if we can hold off a month so I have time to review it thoroughly and ask questions in between meetings, that would be my preference.
Okay.
And this was meant to be a discussion too. Yeah. And what's your recommendation?
The only minor of waiting, though, is things can change in a couple months. So.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
obviously, we want to make a right decision, but I just want to put that out there.
I mean, at least one of those proposals from the bank for the line of credit, but obviously they can renew that. Okay, it expires on August 27th. But yeah, that can go up to 1 month. Yeah,
and again, I support the line of credit. I think we had a really good conversation about that at a prior meeting. I'm more so talking about the issuing of new bonds. I need some time to sit with.
Okay, absolutely. Okay. Right. Okay. So what I would do, and let's see. Yeah, I mean, I will kind of talk to the city manager and think about at least the first thing is the property tax delay. What are our alternatives? And potentially, I see that line of credit, but I guess the members and the council members want to know more about the bond issue for CIP side.
Right.
Okay. Makes sense.
I agree. What's the right amount of the line of credit to deal with some safety in there for temporary cash flow needs? And so I think we can look for a recommendation for you. What's that? And then on the capital, it seems like the markets have improved, but let's wait and see what you recommend and what the amount should be. So,
okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. And that would be a relatively low bond issue for us, right? 15 million.
I mean, some of those years, yeah, we issued those because of the Robert Crown. Yeah. But otherwise, generally, we try to keep tax-supported debt under 10 million. Mm-hmm. And we try to, one of the reasons is we generally pay off 10 million in principal every year. So we try to kind of, before we add the new debt, kind of liquidate the same amount of debt.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you for the line of credit looking into that, because I do think that is definitely something for us to have as an emergency.
Right. And I would definitely consider that for my property tax delay alternative. But for CIP, we would have more conversation.
Right. Right. And long term, the line of credit rate is going to be lower than an equivalent long-term bond, even if at the moment you've got a bit of a
and that's why I want to see that whether is there still more correction on both sides, line of credit and the bond, and we'll see.
Right, but it belongs in our capital structure to avoid just to bridge situations like this to some degree, 10 million, whatever it might be. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Long meeting. Sorry we went over. Is there anything else in the group? Otherwise, I guess we can move to adjourn.
Even I don't know whether we have quorum now.
I don't. We don't have quorum.
No, we don't.
I guess we have to stay on the line. No, I think we'll
stay on for another month.
Stay on for another month. I guess we are adjourned.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The remaining members adjourned.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.